Radical, liberal, Kamala Harris gets in. And by the way, there are numerous ways of saying her name. They were explaining to me, you can say Kamala, you can say Kamala. I said, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what I say. I couldn't care less if I mispronounce it or not. I couldn't care less. Some people think I mispronounce it on purpose, but actually I've heard it said about 7 different ways. There are a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways.
Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and yes, I am officially back from my honeymoon. Now, I want to first start off by saying to everyone out there in the audience, I have to apologize, because every time I'm away from keyboard, some major news happens, it breaks, it changes the face of this country, and this was very notably the case when I was at a car dealership trying to buy a car during January 6th, but this time, the news media, the world, the interwebs, everybody decided to step it up a notch by having the evil orange man nearly assassinated the day that I said my wedding vows, and during the course of my honeymoon, that bullet strayed away from the evil orange man and somehow was a direct kill shot to the presidential campaign of Joseph R. Biden. Now, we're going to talk about this specifically today. There is so much news that I have to catch up on. I also want to give you a breakdown of me doing the whole wedding thing and whatnot. I also got to talk about the fact that I broke my glasses while I was on my honeymoon, and I have a backup pair of glasses, but I can't find it because I don't have my glasses, therefore I can't see anything. So in case this video is completely out of focus, just think it's an artistic choice that I decided to put together so you could see the world how I see it without my glasses. But that being said, Kamala Harris's coup is the topic of today's video. She has been forced upon the American people, and everyone and anyone in left-wing media is pretending like she's a thing, and today I'm going to explain not only how this is absolutely horrible for our country, how Kamala is going to be horrible for our country, but of course, it flies into the face of the narrative that the Democratic Party is the party of democracy. Now, thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
So let's be clear right off the top about what happened to President Joe Biden in this presidential campaign. As you guys very well know, he got absolutely demolished in the debate. Now, it wasn't about the substance of the conversation, because debates rarely are about that. It was about presentation. But in terms of presentation, Joe Biden looked old. He looked like he was on the cusp of dying. He could not figure out where he was. And it was absolutely a disaster, and more disastrous than anybody could have possibly imagined, especially in left-wing media, because they've been telling you about how Joe Biden is actually a dynamo behind the scenes, how he's actually great, he's so quick-witted, he's cognitively sound, even though we saw through all these different various clips that that was not the case.
We'd be able to wipe out his debt, we'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
However, when we last left off this story, before I said my nuptials, Joe Biden was committed to staying in the race.
Let me close with this. I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. Well, I don't. Folks, I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
and I had told you, and unfortunately I am wrong about this, that Joe Biden would not leave. But what ended up happening was something that was even beyond what I could imagine. Essentially, the Democratic Party elites, including representatives from the Clinton campaign, the Obama team, major donors, Hollywood, and of course, top leadership in both the House and the Senate, according to journalist Seymour Hersh, essentially threatened to 25th Amendment Joe Biden out of office to force him to step down if he didn't hand over the ticket to Kamala Harris. Now, we all know, because we actually paid attention, and I've talked about this on this channel in the past before, that Joe Biden never wanted Kamala as his VP. In fact, he promised that he would pick a woman. He had eyes, according to the book Lucky, how Joe Biden barely won the presidency, on Elizabeth Warren as his VP. That's why he specifically promised a black woman on the Supreme Court and just a woman on the VP ticket. However, after the Black Lives Matter riots, Kamala Harris was the most highest ranking black female Democrat in the party, so he was essentially forced to pick her. And again, I will recommend you read that campaign book so you can go over with the voices from the insiders themselves how much they absolutely did not want Kamala, because Kamala is a nasty person who decided to go out of her way to call Joe Biden a racist during the campaign, and then of course do a 180 because she's a complete fraud and jump on board and say that she was Team Biden all the way. All of that happened. It is all on the record. Kamala Harris was picked not even because she was liked, not because she was viewed as qualified or anything like that, but just because she was the highest ranking black female politician at the time. And of course, people are going to say she's only half black. In fact, when she won her Senate race, she was pitched as the first Indian American Senate. All of that happens to be true, but this is the candidate that we have. And a lot of Democrats are pretending to be very excited about this. There is an astroturfing campaign behind Kamala Harris, and I think, and I truly believe, that the chances of the Democrats winning the presidential election in 2024 just went down dramatically, not up, because Joe Biden had the incumbent advantage. Joe Biden is a recognizable figure, and for whatever you want to say about Joe Biden not being able to remember, not being qualified for the office, having dementia, and all that, the fact of the matter is, the reason Joe Biden was a better candidate than Hillary Clinton and is a better candidate than Kamala Harris is due to the fact that Joe Biden has more appeal to white working class voters that are the key voting bloc that Hillary lost in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and in Michigan. And guess what? Kamala, the California senator, does not have that appeal. She talked about banning fracking. She's talked about switching to electric cars. All these different various positions that she's held in order to appeal to the woke California elite will come back to bite her. Not to mention, she is one of the most uncharismatic and unlikable people in the history of American politics.
The environment is vital. Killmonger may have ruined and burned your field of heart-shaped herbs, but don't worry. I'm from California. I can repopulate that field with a bunch of different herbs. To the lovely people of Wakanda, I know you will make the right choice. And as always, Wakanda forever. Paid for by Kamala Harris.
Now, there are so many clips like that are absolutely amazing in every possible way that show you that this woman is a charisma vacuum, but my favorite ones are the ones that we discussed actually recently, which is Kamala Harris talking about how much she loves collard greens because blacks love collard greens, and that's her absolutely favorite thing to cook.
That was me in my suit and heels walking through Charleston International Airport carrying 2 big plastic bags full of fresh South Carolina collard greens. It's a true story. And yes, as I walked on the plane, there were a few people who gave me the look and the nod.
Even though Kamala Harris is of Jamaican descent, that's her black side of the family, and of course of Indian descent, and did not grow up eating Southern black food. And you could tell this by the way that she talks about collard greens and how she cooks so many collard greens that everybody comes over to Kamala's house for her collard greens.
Right, Marlon, so I know how to make a mean pot of greens. In fact, people used to ask me to make greens for them for Christmas. One year, I had so many that I had to wash that we ended up washing them in the bathtub. So I am not playing around. So what you got?
This is pandering on a whole other level, and this is the go-to move for the Kamala Harris campaign. Pander to blacks, pretend to be the most ultra-black person humanly possible, and it's kind of funny that Barack Obama, whose father was of African descent, actually did not do this while he was running for office, and nobody questioned the authenticity of Barack Obama's blackness. I mean, some people did. They said he was not a foundational black American. There's always people in that Tariq Nasheed category that are going to do that. For the most part, because Obama had charisma, because he had some appeal, because he was a great speaker, again, give credit where credit is due, this was not a thing that he needed to do. He didn't need to talk about collard greens and being authentically black all the time in order to appeal to the masses. Now, of course, we also have Kamala's embarrassing performance at the BET Awards, where she was talking to some woke activist who complains all the time about how she doesn't get paid enough as an actor, and we ended up seeing this horrific clip like this.
No, Taraji. Now, you know I wouldn't do that, especially not to a fellow bison. The real, ain't you? You know. So what's on your mind?
Now look, I harped a lot on the fact that Kamala Harris, who's trying to be the blackest black person in the history of Blackenstein, wasn't able to even deliver an appropriate which is what is supposed to be delivered right there. But the fact of the matter is, this entire clip is incredibly cringe, incredibly embarrassing, and should be shocking to the conscience of the American people, if we're being perfectly honest. This woman right here, who can't even admit that she is of Jamaican and Indian heritage, she can't even play up to the culture that she actually grew up in, is trying to be ultra black, doing this nonsense right here, and pretending to fool black Americans because she believes that these people are that dumb that they're willing to follow this. On top of that, you also have her, no joke, talking about how she's out here in these streets.
Women's reproductive rights are on the line. Our Supreme Court is on the line. Our basic freedoms are being tested, Madam VP. I know you've been traveling across the country. What are you hearing?
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets. And let me tell you, you're right, Taraji.
I mean, seriously, people, come on. What the hell are we even talking about? We have a woman right here, again, Indian and Jamaican descent, grew up in Canada, the child of professors. I believe her mother was like a biologist or something like that, very into the STEM fields, talking about how she likes collard greens and she washes them in the bathtub with the fellow blacks because she's out here in these streets because she's the real deal. This is what our presidential politics are. But again, as I said, it's absolutely embarrassing that this woman who could not win the presidency outright, who could not win a primary, who had to drop out a month before the Iowa caucus back in 2020, absolutely destroyed herself in every possible way, is somehow the nominee for the Democrats in a race where they're talking about saving democracy. She essentially stole this VP seat by the violence of the Black Lives Matter riots, which, by the way, was the reason, again, multiple reports confirm this, that she was picked rather than Elizabeth Warren or somebody that Joe Biden actually wanted on his VP ticket. And now she essentially did a coup against Joe Biden, teamed up with Obama under the threat of the 25th Amendment, according to the reporting by Hirsch. And we're supposed to believe that this is democracy. Remember, Joe Biden got more votes for president than anyone in the history of the country ever. That is the line that we were fed constantly for years, anytime anybody questioned the fact that election law significantly changed for the 2020 election, and COVID was used as the excuse, but people voted in a very different way than they ever did in the history of the country, based on these laws that, by the way, in many of the key states weren't even legal to have that kind of voting, a la Pennsylvania, which did not have constitutional support for broad-based mail-in ballots. So all of that was told to us for years about how it's the most democratically elected president ever. Joseph R. Biden is the champion of democracy. He saved us from the evil orange man, and that goes away overnight, snap of the finger, and Kamala Harris is presented to us. And by the way, right now in this moment, she is getting a bump in the polls, although the polls look absolutely crazy. There's a Morning Consulate poll that says she's somehow up 11 in Michigan, but down 4 in Pennsylvania. That's absolutely asinine. But when you look at the RCP average, which again is national polling, but Republicans don't even have to be in the lead nationally in order to win the presidency because of the Electoral College, Trump has actually hit his all-time RCP polling average. So when you look at the aggregate of the polls, Trump is doing better now than he ever did before, which makes sense. It's something that I told you throughout this whole process, because replacing Joe Biden in the 11th hour is an absolute disaster. And again, there's a reason why everyone overlooked Kamala Harris, because she's a horrible candidate in every possible way. And I told you one of the major problems with replacing Joe Biden with any candidate is that any legitimate candidate, a la a Gavin Newsom, a Gretchen Whitmer, somebody who actually thinks that they have the ability to win the presidency outright in 2024, was not going to sign up for this. So you always had to put up an inferior candidate, and what we're seeing right now is the astroturfing, and by the way, the gaslighting of the American people related to Kamala Harris, because they're now trying to erase the fact that Kamala Harris herself was put in charge very early on of the border, named the border czar, and they're trying to pretend that that didn't happen. But the fact of the matter is, it did. Kamala Harris was put in charge of the border. She's advocating for amnesty. She never bothered to even visit the border for the longest time because she thought it was a non-problem, and that was the line of the administration. And everything this woman touches dies because she's an absolutely horrible politician.
My friends in the media and my friends who are in the Democratic Party need to grapple with this point, and I know that they won't, or I fear that they won't, which is that there's a whole swath of America out there who feels like they have been systematically gaslit about Joe Biden and his age. Yep. There have been segments. There have been people who work in this building who have written browbeating things about the New York Times, even polling on the issue of whether Biden is too old. Like, that's pretty controversial, New York Times. I'm not sure you should do that. It's in March of this year that between Robert Hur coming out and people such as Kamala Harris saying that Robert Hur's thing was clearly politically motivated, she said, and obviously inaccurate. She said that in February. So to come off after all of this, and then suddenly a bad debate, everything gets scrambled up, and then Kamala comes, and we see 1 week of flowing and gushing, yes, reflection of the euphoria that is real that people are experiencing. And I actually am happy that people are experiencing euphoria. However, that feeling that the other people are experiencing is also real, which is that stop gaslighting us right now. And if you keep doing it, I've gotten emails from, and I'm not a pro-Trump person at all, from people who are saying, if people keep doing this, I'm thinking about rage voting for Trump. That is a terrible outcome.
Not to mention the fact that Kamala Harris was out there front and center, as pointed out by Matt Welch of Reason TV on CNN, saying that Joe Biden was perfectly fine. She participated in the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline so they wouldn't have a Democratic primary, because she knew when push came to shove, she wouldn't actually be able to win in the Democratic primary. She didn't want the voters to actually have a weigh-in on her candidacy, so she helped engage into the cover-up until the very last minute, where supposedly, according to this reporting from this very trusted journalist who exposed a scandal in Vietnam, again, look at his record, look at his history, they decided to threaten Joe Biden with the 25th Amendment, and of course, they ended up holding him hostage financially, which people are trying to give Kamala Harris credit for as if she raised $81 million on her own, even though this was clearly and obviously the well-reported threat from the donors that they were going to withhold until they had another candidate. Now look, a lot of you guys out there in my audience know where I am on the political spectrum. You know I'm more on the right than I am on the left, but typically when it comes to presidential elections, because I live in New York State, which is a solid blue state, and my vote doesn't really matter, I don't really talk about voting or the importance of elections or anything like that all that much. I'm not a big fan of the day-to-day presidential politics. I do enjoy the horse race aspect of it, and that is because, again, I don't want people to hyper-focus on the president because he shouldn't have an impact on your day-to-day life, but B, it's because I have basically no impact. But this cannot stand. You cannot have these people run on, oh, we gotta stop the threats to democracy, the evil orange man is coming for our democratic process, and then subvert democracy in such an obvious way in order to install a fraudulent candidate, and then try to rewrite history, rewrite all the Google search terms, rewrite all the Facebook search terms, in order to make it seem like her record isn't what it is. Kamala Harris, despite what the left-wing media says, did support the Minnesota bail fund. She did support the bailing out of Black Lives Matter rioters. A bunch of those people came out and they committed crimes. Kamala Harris is, in fact, somebody who said she would get rid of private insurance. She is, in fact, somebody who constantly is on the wrong side of different issues. And yes, she was the border czar. So they could try to lie, they could try to pretend, they could try to do a backdoor Obama campaign to pretend that she's the celebrity candidate. But the fact of the matter is, nobody likes this woman. Everybody understands that she's absolutely terrible, and she needs to be stopped. This kind of 11th hour swap out needs to be undone. It needs to be punished by the voters. So not only does Kamala Harris need to lose, but she needs to lose in a commanding way. So yes, I am fully behind the defeat of Kamala Harris, whatever form that takes electorally, whether that be a popular vote, absolute obliteration with an electoral college win, or just an electoral college win. Whatever it is, whatever it needs to be, she needs to lose, and she needs to lose in a devastating fashion so that the Democratic Party learns their lesson. Because if this is proven to be a legitimate strategy, that the party elites can just toss a candidate 100 days away from the election, then that is going to spell the death nail for the primary process, which again, if they wanted to get rid of it, they should have just done it in a genuine way. Now, of course, all these different people are going to say, Cope, you're just scared of Kamala, you're just scared of Kamala. Listen, let me be clear about this. Obviously, this needs to be said. I don't want Kamala to be president because she'll be absolutely horrible and she'll do the things that she has promised to do. She will expose her authoritarian tendencies that she always had, and that will be bad for the country. But I am in no way, shape, or form afraid of Kamala Harris or think that she is more risky to win than Joe Biden. The only reason I'm upset is because I predicted Joe Biden would hang on, so he, in his weakness, actually disappointed me. But the fact of the matter is that the Democrats are the ones that are afraid. This is why they did something that is nearly unprecedented in American politics, which is throw out their candidate 100 days before the election, try to swap and do an emergency substitute because they were so scared about Biden and they deserve to be punished for it. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts on this whole situation. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias. I am back officially. This has been me talking about the Kamala Harris coup. Till next time.